I'm really sorry. I don't understand.
I think we will be in a situation that eventually City get their comeuppance.
One and only title for the year. Welcome back to the Lose to Win podcast with myself, Josh, and Jack. How are you doing, Jack?
Really good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. Good week so far. Looking forward to the weekend. Not going to lie.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so I was thinking we're going to do a bit of a summary of the Fat Lads roundup, aren't we, this week? And then we're going to run into some football headlines for the week. We've got a couple of other topics we want to discuss, and then for the last bit, I'm going to run over some fantasy football again, mainly what I've got in my team this week. So, do you want to kick us off, Jack, with the Fat Lads roundup this week?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so a good week all round, I think, for everybody at Fat Lads Football. There was some great goals scored, some really tight matches, some pretty one-sided matches, but obviously the key thing is around who lost what in terms of weight. So, bit of a roll call. So we've got Mike with an incredible 5.2 kilograms lost, which is a serious amount of weight. Mike Andrews at 2.6. I actually lost 1.7, which is actually the most I've ever lost in a week.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah. Jesus with 1.6, Tim with 1.5, as well as Jason with 1.5, and Tom with 1.2. And this week round, there was 12 hat tricks, which for people that don't partake in our Fat Lads football, it's essentially people that have lost 3 weeks worth of weight, if that makes sense. So not consecutively, I should say, just 3 weeks weight loss earns you 1 goal for your team, which is essentially a hat trick. We've also got Sid for Super Whites hitting his 20%, which I know has been coming and been hard work for him, but he's absolutely smashing it. And again, that man Mikey has lost 30% of his starting weight, which has worked out as a total of 43.5 kilograms, which I worked out earlier in kind of old money, or what I'm used to in terms of stones and pounds, is just shy of 7 stone, which is incredible.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
and
Congratulations, Mike, if you're listening.
absolutely, what Mike Welsh is what an inspiration. And I think one thing to note is that he definitely, I'm trying to think back, and my memory is a bit sketchy. He's definitely not one of the guys that started right at the beginning. So he is, I wouldn't say a late joiner, but somebody that has not been there from the very start, but has absolutely smashed it. Every week you see him turn up. And with me and you were talking, it's relatively hard to notice, I think, when you see somebody week in, week out. And he was for a long time getting involved with the Tuesday and Thursday football as well. And when you see somebody that regularly, you don't necessarily notice it as much. But I can only imagine what people that haven't seen him for maybe 6 months or even a year, he's half the man.
Yeah.
Absolute incredible.
Yeah,
And
incredible.
yeah, like you say, massive shout out to Mike. I think he does listen. And on top of that, as well as what he's done, he is genuinely one of the nicest people at
Oh, yeah,
football.
absolutely. I was about to say that. I literally have it. I was about to say it couldn't have happened to a nicer person.
Absolutely. I think it's got to be about 3 or 4 weeks ago back at Hamworthy. Either I kicked him or he kicked me. And he must have apologised about 15 times during the game as well. And he's he's there for the weight loss, isn't he? He loves his football.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
loves getting stuck in, but it's definitely not his priority. His priority is getting healthier and becoming the new Mikey rather than the old Mikey. And he's just such like you hit the nail on the head. He's such a nice guy, genuine, top bloke, and yeah, well done, mate. Really, really proud of you and an inspiration for us all.
Yeah, brilliant. I don't know if you wanted to have a bit of a summary as to where we are in the season, or if you wanted to leave it there and move on. I know there were some very close games today. Well, and one that wasn't very close at all, I must admit.
Yeah,
This week. Do you have a particular roundup you wanted to go through, or?
yeah. I can only really steal what Steve sends to us. So again, a bit of background for anybody that doesn't get involved with the Fat Lads football is that Coach Steve sends out a very well worded roundup on a Saturday morning. I think a lot of us sit there with bated breath, waiting for it to come through to see what he has to say. And inevitably, we already know the results, but he always does such a good kind of roundup and a roll call for everybody that's done so well. and even a little bit of a pick me up for people that haven't, and just kind of a continuous reminder of what we're doing it for and the reason why we're doing it. But yeah, from what I understand, we're sat just about halfway through the league season.
Yep.
Pretty tight, I think. From this is all from memory now, to be completely honest. I think Reds are leading the way on six
Yeah, well, yeah.
points. Yeah, and then we have Whites are on 4, which is my team,
Yeah,
and
so red team are currently leading with 6 points. The
yeah,
second are the blue team. They're level on 6 points behind on goal difference.
there we go.
Then
Yeah,
we have your super whites, as you put it, on 4 points in third. Then again, level but only losing by goal difference are the yellow team with 4 points. In fifth place, we've got the green team on 2 points. And then last, but certainly not least from my perspective, as I am the team captain, and this is not a very good indictment of our team, but on last, we've got 2 points at the bottom, again on goal difference, is the black team.
yeah. Fair play. Yeah. So I'm glad you had that all to hand, because I hadn't. But yeah,
Yes.
it's been super competitive. To be honest, from a personal perspective, like I say, it's been my best week in terms of weight loss,
Yeah.
and the confidence that gave me going into actually playing. I didn't realize that buzz walking away and jumping on that scales and Steve going, yes, Jack is back, and that was kind of a moment where I was kind of like, yeah, I'm on it. I'm absolutely on it. And I rocked up to the pitch, and by my own admission, I played brilliantly. I got a hat trick, and
Yeah, I
I
was going
think
to
as
say
a
you won
team
6-0 or something in the end,
we
didn't you?
did, we did, yeah,
Yeah.
and I definitely wasn't expecting. And we played so well as a team. It's taken a couple of weeks for us to kick in and get going, but we really have clicked, and I'm really really proud of the white boys. And I think it was a real step in the right direction. The only downside is that we didn't have Baz there. I know we kept a clean sheet, but it's one of those things that you want to do it as a team, and he was sending us photos from Spain, I think sunny Spain, with a pint in his hand, going, "Good luck, lads." But it was honestly the high coming away from Friday was awesome, and we really are riding that wave at the moment. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be playing tomorrow following an injury, all of my own fault, on Sunday in our 11-a-side football against the Pool Fat Lads football, which
I'm sorry to hear you're injured, mate. I mean, I didn't quite realize it was as bad as that, but in
yeah.
general, I think it was just, let's just say it was a competitive fixture, uh, um,
Yeah,
generally
it's
across
fair
the
to
board
say.
for that
Yeah.
one for the weekend. I don't have any further updates on the Fat Lads football, other than it was just another good week for weight loss overall, I think, and everyone's moving in the right direction. Yeah, well, that's the roundup for the week. I think we'll just move into some football headlines for this week then. There's a couple of transfers that me and Jack want to talk about in particular. A first one I'll kick off is a big one if you're a Manchester United fan. They've got a striker in the door eventually, someone who isn't on the sidelines for 20 out of the 38 games of the season. So we've got Rasmus Højlund in for 70 million euros. So, and he's a 20-year-old Danish international. So I'm quite intrigued of what you think about this, Jack, because from a Man United fan perspective, some people will look at the fee and go, "Oh, it's silly money, and he's a young lad." But it's going back towards something Manchester United used to do, and they haven't done for such a long time, is buy someone who is a little raw, who's got great potential, who they can kind of mold. And now they've got a good coach in there as well. We don't really know what he's going to be able to do this season, but in my mind, the right kind of recruitment. Forget the money, the right kind of recruitment. You used to have, your Ibrahimoviches and your Sanchez's and your Cavani's and people like that who are, in their 30s mostly, come in before, at least over the last close to a decade, I would say. And this seems to be going back in the right direction. At least that's my opinion. We'll see how well he does. I'm not expecting him to score 15, 20 goals this season. I'm just thinking that it would just be good to have a bit more of a focal point. And with someone like Mason Mount in the team and Bruno Fernandes, who creates a ton of chances, and Marcus Rashford on the left, and I think they've got a decent attacking team. So we'll see. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on it, Jack.
Yeah, I think you're right. From an outside perspective, it seems a lot of money, but I don't think an Arsenal fan is the type of fan that should be throwing around anybody suggesting somebody's spending too much money, because we are not competing with the Saudis, but we're we're very much by large the biggest spenders so far in the Premier League, and probably Europe as well. One thing I was a little frustrated because I went to the Bournemouth game, which we'll touch on later against Atalanta, and I was expecting him to play. I was hoping to play because I'd heard the rumours and knew that
Yeah.
he played for them, and I was looking forward to kind of seeing how raw he really is. I think my judgment, I think, is very similar to yours. Is that he needs some time, and as much as that price tag will hinder anybody, as proven in the past, when there's a substantial amount of money put on a player, I think he needs time. He is raw, and he's going
Yeah.
to need the right opportunity to grow and learn and do better. And I think whilst I think you're referencing players like Anthony Martial and other strikers that you had, I don't think they've ever been United strikers, if that makes sense. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I think you've come away from having that prolific goal scorer, and hopefully for your sake, not for anybody else in the league, but hopefully for United fans, he comes good and he does what he needs to do. But time is what really every player of his caliber and his age need, and hopefully he gets that and gets an opportunity to shine.
It moves us on to Arsenal and your team because I wanted to discuss David Raya potentially going to Arsenal. I have to admit, this doesn't make so much sense to me from my perspective. Maybe I'm just very high on Aaron Ramsdale,
Yeah,
but I don't understand why you've just given him a brand new contract. You have done that just this summer, isn't that correct?
yeah,
And then
that's
you've
right.
gotten
And giving
David
him the
Raya
number
in the
one
door.
shirt as well.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I don't understand. Can you tell me?
Yeah. So
Is
from my perspective and how I'm looking upon it, it's just initially when it was linked, I wasn't overly sure. Inevitably, it sounds like Matt Turner's going to go to Forest. Matt Turner's been a perfectly good number two. I don't think he's pulled up any trees and really fought for that number one jersey. But what I think the David Raya potential signing, I know it keeps getting linked, and Fabrizio Romano keeps suggesting that it's close. What I think that is it's the very first statement of intent as an elite mentality for Arsenal and Arteta. So if you strip it back, Arteta is a disciple of Guardiola, and Guardiola builds 2 11s within his team, two teams that he could comfortably put out there.
Yeah,
And
but
I
you have
think,
to be fair though. He does have a kind of a nation state backing on that. He has all the money in
yeah,
the world for that.
yeah.
I'm not saying Arsenal don't, yeah, and obviously you want to build from a position of strength. I get that, but I just do Arsenal have that kind of clout? I don't know. You can hopefully tell me that.
Well, this is it. I think this is the point. This is why I think this is such potentially. I would argue Arteta's most important signing if this comes off. And the reason why I say that is it's kind of changing the mentality within the bracket that we always get put in as the young pretenders or the surprise package for last season, which absolutely we were, but there's not going to be any more scrutiny of a season on Arsenal now than there's probably ever been, maybe post Invincibles season. You may find one or two seasons after that, but the scrutiny and the pressure upon that team and Arteta now is greater than ever. Last season they did well because they flew under the radar for such a long time, and when the pressure built, that's when you saw them buckle. And what he's doing with a signing like this, and this is why I think it's the most important one, is that it's saying to everybody in that team, as well as Ramsdale's done, and I'm a huge fan of Ramsdale, a massive, massive fan of Ramsdale, and obviously both of us having seen him play for Bournemouth, knowing that everybody's now seeing what we saw for such a long time with Bournemouth, is that it is an absolute statement of intent and a statement to each of those players that not one of those players is irreplaceable. Not one of those players can sit back and go, I know that I've got this position, it's mine. And having two first choice goalkeepers in a team is probably going to be Arteta's most difficult job to keep them happy. Inevitably, one is going to play all of the Premier League, one is likely to play all of the Caballero Cup and FA Cup, and then the Champions League, I think, is up for grabs between the two of them.
Well,
I
I was
think,
going to ask that because I was going to say, surely they both can't be number one. I understand the idea of splitting it, but they're not. Neither of them are going to be particularly happy with that. I would have thought. I just I completely understand building from a position of strength and no one is safe. It's about standards.
Hmm.
I understand that, and it pushes people. But I just is he going to start? Like, I don't understand. I don't know what
He
kind of
won't
money has
start.
been
No,
touted. I don't know what money's been touted. I have to admit, I can't. I
I think it's
haven't really checked the
35 to
reports
40
properly. But
million.
okay, well, just that to me seems like for a goalkeeper starter kind of money. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, maybe I'm focusing too much on the fee.
Hmm.
But and I have no. I like Davarara as well. I think he's a really good goalkeeper. I actually
Yeah,
think he could be Arsenal's number one. I have no concern with his ability. Why would you give Aaron Ramsdale a massive contract if you were going to replace him? So then I'm
don't
like,
think he is.
okay. So if he's not going to do that, I don't know. I just feel like I know you don't want a massive drop off
No.
between either goalkeeper when you play in different competitions,
The only thing I
but
can say on
surely it
it
would be a
is,
little bit better. Go on.
yeah, the key thing is, I think it's Ramsdale's to lose. That's my opinion in terms of that number one spot. And what they're doing is they're signing a goalkeeper that will be fully aware of how good Ramsdale is, fully aware of the task at hand. Nobody is going to be sat in front of him feeding him a load of bullshit, going, "You'll get the first team shirt. You'll get the first team shirt. You'll start. You'll start. You'll start." What they're saying is, we have a very good goalkeeper at the moment. We want to improve our goalkeeper selection because beyond Matt Turner, you've got Hine, and I can't remember the name of the other lad. That gives you an idea of how poor they are. The drop off is huge. The levels are really poor. I genuinely think it's make or break. It's a make or break decision. And I think inevitably, if Ramsdale buckles and if Ramsdale doesn't improve, because there's definitely improvements to be made on there. Lo and behold, I witnessed his first penalty save in probably about 15 years yesterday in a penalty shootout against Monaco. And that was one of my key things, is that we do concede a lot of penalties because Gabriel and Saliba are relatively rash in terms of their slide tackles. And every time there's a penalty, I'm convinced he's not saving it. And yesterday he saved one out of the five, and we ended up winning the shootout. And that straight away is a confidence boost. I could see that it was right in front of me. I was right down that end. I genuinely think, and from the outside looking in, and my initial thoughts are very similar to you. What's Ramsdale done wrong? What's Ramsdale going to think? For that reception when his name was called out yesterday at the Emirates, that penalty save, the cheer that he gets, the support he gets from the team, the belief he has from the club by giving him the number one jersey and a brand new contract, I think will only be positive for him, and he could
Yeah.
go on and become fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, I do want to just move on. There's been a couple of other potential transfers. Another goalkeeper, so Robert Sanchez, just today, I heard that he's going to Chelsea from Brighton for about £25 million. Seems like that's going to be a replacement. Mendy's already out the door, so it seems like it's going to be a replacement for Kepa. Again, that could be another. They both stay and they both play
yeah,
situations. Not sure about that there. And then Man City signing again, position of strength. I think they've got about 7 or 8 centre backs, but they've signed Guardiola from Leipzig for
yeah.
£77 million or 90 million euros. I mean, I didn't realize he was so young as well. Actually, thought he was in his like mid 20s, but he's like 21, I think.
Yeah.
So again, another really good signing, another position of strength.
Do you know what
Just
that signing does to them as well?
go
It
on.
makes them the second £1 billion valued club.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so there was, because I'd heard it a couple of times on the radio today. If Arsenal were classed as the first £1 billion valued squad, and now if City sign this chap for 75 million, I think it is, or something crazy, they would then become the second, which is just.
Yeah.
Admittedly, Arsenal have got quite a bit of deadwood to chop before the end of the transfer window, and we're likely to fall
True.
back under that. But
There is a
that's just
difference though.
silly, isn't it?
Yeah, but there is a difference. I mean, it is silly, but there is a difference slightly in that much of Arsenal's value has come from the drastic improvement and the up and coming talent that you have in the team.
Yeah,
Because see, people like Saka are now 125, 150 million pound players, etc. Value.
yeah,
Much of City's has kind of been bought in. I'm not saying they haven't improved players; they have, But when you consider people like Grealish was £100 million, is he worth more than £100 million a year 2 years later? Sorry, I don't know. He might be 105, 110, but most of that is
Yeah.
something they've paid and they've laid out on the player to get them in the door, and to build that value versus having the value come from talent that you've nurtured.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
City don't have a Rob Holding in their ranks either, do they? Arsenal do.
Mm, no. Okay. I That's it for the transfer side of things. I do want to move on. We've got Juventus getting kicked out of UEFA Conference League. Not that they'll care too much, I wouldn't have thought, for breaching financial fair play rules. I don't know the full ins and outs of this, honestly. I guess I'm not really surprised. I, I suppose you aren't either, are you, really, Jack?
No, Juventus have been around the block this sort of behaviour, haven't they? They've done everything in their time that could be considered unfair. The less said on it, the better. I think I'm just glad that we're not. I think we will be in a situation that eventually City get their comeuppance, but that's again something to definitely
Yeah,
cross
well, we
over when
can.
it happens.
The next thing football has on referees' new guidance crack down on time wasting and dissent. There's a few things that have come of this. Obviously, referees get basically new guidance every year. Whether they keep it, they probably keep it up for the first 10 games and then we'll see afterwards. But I'm hoping this one they really do kind of crack down on, because this is something that I think quite a lot of football fans would agree with is relatively frustrating. I know that they've set out a few rules under that, so only one person from a manager's perspective is allowed in the technical area, so no more Jason Tyndall in the technical area alongside Eddie Howe,
No, it will
which, I
just be
mean, it's just
Jason. That's all.
yeah,
That's all we're
yeah,
going to see.
exactly. Eddie Howe won't be able to get in there, will he? All game would just be no, 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 Eddie, you sit on the bench. I'm standing in the corner here.
What does
Um,
everybody call him? Mad Dog in it or something? That's his
yeah,
nickname, I think.
yeah. I love it. I love it. I know people
Yeah,
complain, but I love it. Brilliant.
he's a character,
Um,
isn't he?
yeah. Manager behaviour, so therefore be under severe scrutiny. I think the whole idea is that it's a yellow card if anyone comes into the technical area other than one other person, and it's a straight red for any dissent towards any other manager or bench or the fourth official. Sorry. So I think that's the idea, and then there'll obviously be touchline bans for the anything more severe. The kind of time wasting stuff. So they're going to time to the second for celebrations and substitutions and things like this. So as we said in the build up, about World Cup kind of levels of added time will most likely be added on. I think there was a game they used as an example when they broke this story about how Brentford, there was about 3 minutes and 27 seconds from when they scored to when Liverpool kicked off again.
I remember seeing it on Sky Sports News. Yeah,
Yeah, and that was, I mean, it's insane. I suppose they would have added on what 30 seconds for a standard celebration at the time, or something like they normally do. But now they're going to literally add that entire 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Sorry. So that's, I would say, an improvement. It comes back to a potential debate in future around whether they should just stop the clock, but we can have that debate another time. The kind of strictness on cards for dissent and surrounding the ref. So this is one that there should never be so much people. I mean, the number of players surrounding a ref is just it's criminal all the time. You see it all the time. So I'm hoping they're going to throw up yellow cards left, right, and centre, and potentially red cards for anyone who approaches the ref who isn't the captain. Basically, I know it
yeah,
sounds really strict, but that's my opinion on it. Is you literally do that for the first few games, and they'll soon not go anywhere near the ref.
yeah.
So
My opinion on that is that we've been here before, haven't we, with these threats? And like you say, until somebody sticks their head above the parapet and actually starts handing out the cards and starts sticking to what they set out at the beginning of the season, it will just take a month and a half, and it will just be the next headline will be in, and everybody's forgotten about that, and you'll get every opportunity. I think the shithousery in football is part of the game.
yeah,
There's some of it that I love, and you sit back and you hate it when it's against you, but you love it when it's your team
yeah,
doing it. But one thing I put on our Insta is about the ball and play minutes. So Premier League, I was so surprised that Premier League was the highest. Admittedly, I don't watch a lot of the Championship, League One or Two, but the Premier League ball and play of a 90-minute game is 55 minutes. Championship is 52. League One is 50, and then League Two is 48. And I'm thinking, My
I in my mind, it makes sense because people like Man City and Arsenal, they play it around. It's the kind of level of
Yeah,
tactical
they want it
that
in
you
play.
can yeah, exactly. They want it in play, but more than that, I think it's the level of quality, and this is no disrespect to the other leagues, or the quality of player allows the managers to play that kind of possession football,
Yeah,
especially the top teams like Man City, which is why there's no surprise, I'm sure, if you looked at the Premier League table in that, as in per team, you'd probably see that the ball is in play more for Man City games than it is any other team in the league.
yeah.
I would have assumed, I don't know this for a fact,
No, I think
and that's
it's
purely
a fair
based on
guess.
that's and I guess Arsenal would be right up there now as well, based on last season at least. So I think that's probably why the Premier League overall has the ball in play. But 55, was it 55 you said, out of 90 minutes?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, I mean it's terrible really, isn't it? I
yeah,
I mean, I get the idea that you don't want a game to be like an American football game where you're there for 3 hours, but at the same time, I mean, the idea would be if you did a stop clock, I know we go back to this another time, but is that you have the ball in play like rugby, it's like 80 minutes game, and you do 40-minute halves, and then the ball it stops every time it goes out. Again, maybe there's no knowing that it could last 2 hours, it could last any length of time really. So
yeah.
maybe that's a problem, but I did
Whilst we've
like being
been
back.
talking, I've just
Yeah,
quickly brought up the table because I knew I'd seen it somewhere of the amount of time in terms of ball in play for Premier League teams. I'll rattle off the first kind of half. The bottom half, there's a few surprising ones at the bottom, which I will mention shortly. But Man City, you're right, bang on. Theirs was
okay.
60 minutes. Then it was Liverpool. Then it was West Ham, interestingly, at 56 minutes. And
Mm,
they had an awful season. Spurs at 58. Leicester, seeing as they got relegated, got 56. United next at 55. Arsenal, Brighton, Bournemouth, and Chelsea all on 55, a couple of seconds. But right at the bottom, and I can vouch for this because I saw this game live. The Arsenal Newcastle game where Eddie was
yeah, Newcastle,
performing
yeah.
the dark arts. They are the
Yeah, yeah,
lowest at 51 minutes, so they're a
yeah.
full 9 minutes behind City in terms of ball and play average, which is absolutely mental.
Yeah, it is. I actually did see something about that during the season, so that doesn't surprise me just purely because I had seen somewhere that they were quite good at not keeping the ball in play. But I think it was something to do with, I think Eddie Howe touched on this in an interview when he was asked or something. They said about how, well, there's an intensity that they play with every single time the ball is in play. So the amount of time when the ball isn't in play encourages players to take an extra breather and take that extra time because they need it.
Mm.
And so you'll find the ball isn't in play for very long, but what they do with the ball when it is in play is much more effective and they're much more intense.
Well, clearly that
Um,
that equates to that table and it being the bottom of that, but finishing in the top four.
yeah,
It kind of answers that question that if you flip the table around and see where they actually finished against those numbers, yeah, City won the league, but then you got, like I say, West Ham, third highest average time ball in play. It's
yeah.
interesting.
Again, West Ham and Leicester. I mean, in theory,
Mm.
you could say that's why Leicester went down. Kept the
Yeah.
ball in play too much because then they didn't have the players to do it with. Maybe, you know, as an example.
Mm.
Anyway, so this general crackdown, we'll see how it goes. You know, they did say about more leniency on contact within the game as well, but again, we'll see how that goes as well because I think that slightly contradicts the idea of them being surrounded by the refs. Knowing Premier League players, they tend to go down relatively easy on average, and so and there tends to be a lot of people surrounding refs about decisions they will or won't get. And so if
Yeah.
they're not getting more, they're getting less of those decisions because contact been more and more of that's been allowed. You might get even more people surrounding the ref. So who knows? We'll see. As
Potential
you say,
double-edged sword.
yeah, yeah, it could be a month, could be more. Well, I'm hoping they keep it going
Yeah.
anyway. Generally. So I do want to get onto match day experience because you said about you went to see Arsenal, was it yesterday? And you saw
Yeah.
Bournemouth at the weekend as well.
Yeah. I've been
So
busy. The wife's been obviously very happy with me.
would love to get a rundown generally your week so far and how you found it.
Okay. So in terms of I went to the Bournemouth Atalanta game as I referenced earlier. Atalanta went out 3-1 winners. Admittedly, I missed the last goal because I wanted to beat the rush a little bit. Not that there's a great deal of rush of 12,000. Not it was probably not even anywhere near 12,000, but 12,000 people get out of Dean Court. In terms of the match day experience, not a lot of change. One thing I've always loved about the club, and knowing it a bit more than others because of what my brother's role is within the community side of things, is that they are a family club. I've always been very proud of Bournemouth being like that, and I think just the general engagement in terms of your match day experience has always been pretty good. So the fan zones, the kids fan zones before, the general feel about the club, I think, is relatively positive at the moment. I know there wasn't everybody particularly happy with the way that O'Neill was kind of handed off, but I think the intention and the reason behind it was all for a good reason. I think the owners and the club want to move in the right direction, and I think they've made a good choice with Iriola. I hope he gets the time. And one of the first things I wrote is you can definitely see the philosophy in practice already. There's definite work needed, but you can see the intent, and all the stats suggest that Iriola's teams are pressing teams and win the ball high up, and the intent was there. Whether they were doing it right or do it well enough is kind of up for debate.
Yeah,
But
haters use the word chaotic, don't they?
yeah, I would say, and one of the headlines coming away from it when I spoke to Ryan and Neil on Sunday, they said, "What did you think?" And I said, it's going back to a familiar state with Eddie when it got to a point where we realised we couldn't defend very well. We're just going to try and outscore everybody and try and win the games that we should win, and generally take quite a heavy beating as we used to against all of the bigger clubs. And there's a similar thing about it. I'm just hoping he's a bit more fine-tuned in getting the other side right. And the first goal actually the lead up to the first goal for Atalanta was quite worrying because Senesi and the other centre back, I always forget his name, the relatively young Ukrainian lad, they parted like the sea. Do you know what I mean? There was so much press and so much energy once they had broke the lines and got through that, and in the transition looked really, really dangerous. And I don't think it was overly because of how good and how well Atalanta played. I think it was how poorly Bournemouth dealt with those transition points and moments. And the first goal was a good example of that. The second goal was a great run, slot through, kind of through ball that kind of split the defence, and a really tidy finish. Bournemouth's goal was Senesi with what normally you'd call a tap in, but he hit it on the half volley and almost took the net off from about 5 yards away. But all in all, he always seems to find himself in the right place. And I missed the third goal, but I watched back, and it was the second ball from defending, which again Bournemouth have always really had that as their Achilles heel, not defended set pieces very well at all. And as an overview with some of the new players, I was impressed by Kirkes. One thing that he did well was drive forward with the ball, and didn't necessarily look for an unnecessary pass, if that makes sense. When he had the ball at his feet, he gained yards and then looked for a pass. Frustrated me a couple of times where he had Kluivert in front of him, who I don't think had a bad game. Kluivert weren't making the runs, and he was basically stood still with Kirkes running with the ball at him. And so Kirkes had to cut back and make a pass sideways or back, gaining yards for the team, but not necessarily overly positive. I think if he's with a bit of confidence, I think he's going to get to a point where he can peel off a quick 1-2 from Kluivert and really get behind some defences.
I think the idea is to use that width, isn't it? It's very
Definitely.
much a get the ball wide and high as possible, as quickly as possible, and use that pace. I mean, we've got insane pace on the wings.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we'll see. Continue.
I think there's some definite improvements needed to be made before West Ham next weekend. I think they've got Lorient this weekend at home at 5 p.m. I'm not going to that one, but I will keep an eye on it, and we'll definitely watch the highlights and hopefully see some improvements. I think you'll get a better idea from that game who he's going to start with. I think there's an abundance of wide players at Bournemouth, and I think that may be an issue. He seems to have started a lot with Jaden Anthony and David Brooks, which I'm not mad about. But I think there is a lot of competition for not so many places, and they keep getting linked with wide players. So all in all, I wasn't overly impressed, but I can see the improvements and I can see what they're trying to do. I hope the game against Lorient's a bit easier for them and they get a chance
It'll
to have a
take some
go at it.
time, won't it?
Yeah.
It'll take time, like all these things. I mean, it's a drastically different kind of system to
Mm,
what they were playing under Gary O'Neill. So I think it's going to take him a little bit of time anyway, as we all say. So
yeah.
we'll
And then I
see.
guess we move on to Arsenal and Monaco last night in the inaugural Emirates Cup. It's the first time I've been back there for quite a while. I used to go pretty religiously. I was a little bit frustrated that it was moved to a Wednesday night, mainly because I wanted to take the kids, as it's relatively easy to get tickets to. But it's moved for the right reasons, as we're playing City at the weekend in the Community
Yep.
Shield. So overall, match day experience is very, very different. You're very more detached from the club, I think, at Arsenal. I think the way that they kind of do their pre-game stuff, everything is so corporate. So you got just a few of the sponsors. You've got Prime Hydration adverts happening all the time on the big screens. You've got Huawei. You've got the Posh Coffee Company. It shows how much these adverts are having an effect on me. I can't remember the name of the Posh Coffee Company, the Vetsy or something like that. Emirates, obviously being the Emirates Cup, they absolutely plastered. Not that they don't already, but loads of their adverts everywhere. So a very, very different feel to the Bournemouth kind of pre-game side of things. In terms of the game, I think Arsenal were pretty poor, if I'm completely honest, for the first 30 minutes. Went 1-0 down to a pretty easy cross into the box. I'd say the guy scored a great header. If anything, I don't know if you've seen the goal, but it was absolutely smashed at him, and he kind of ducked, and he did try to header it, but I would say it more hit him than he headed it, if that makes sense. And ended up in the postage stamp. But it was a fair enough goal. I think Martinelli let himself down defensively there. Not that he's renowned for that, but it's something he's going to have to do. And any good team need the players that can go forward and back. Look dangerous on the break, but I don't think that's anything new. I think Arsenal was considered almost like that red arrows when they're attacking. All of them seem to go together and do it well together. Nketiah did what Nketiah does. I think it was a pretty good goal for the equaliser at the back post. His striking instinct has always been top notch. I don't think that can ever be brought into question. I just don't think he is a top four striker. I love that he was given the captaincy yesterday. He's Arsenal through and through. I just don't think he's going to be what we need. And if we want to challenge for serious titles and serious honours at the end of this season, Jesus needs to be fit, or we need to find somebody that's gonna do it. I think Balogun will probably go because he wants first team football. Saka didn't feature at all. He was warming up. He got a huge ovation when he was warming up in front of us during the game, but never actually. He was basically him and Matt Turner, and I think maybe one other, the only players that didn't come on, which was very interesting.
There's no
Hoping,
debate that he's going to play at all, though, is there? I mean, he'll play the Community
oh God
Shield.
no, God no. I'm just hoping that there's not an injury or there's not anything to
Yeah, well,
worry
they've
about.
kept it quiet, so
Well, they did with Jesus, didn't they? I think his they said that he had a procedure, and it turns out it was 2 days ago. So they kept it very quiet. Very good at that. Arteta plays these games a little bit with it, rightfully so. The game finished as a draw. I think the end, the kind of last 20 minutes when he brought on players like Jorginho, Havertz, Odegaard, finished the game well. Ended up in a draw. Went to penalties, as I referenced earlier. Aaron Ramsdale saved the penalty. I don't think there's anything too much to look into in terms of the penalties, other than that I'm glad that he finally saved one.
one and only title for the year.
But yeah, all in all, I think an enjoyable trip. I was up in London anyway for work, so it made sense that I popped in. Tickets were reasonable, so yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Anyway, did you want to touch on Championship or football in general? It's coming back, competitive football this weekend. We've got not just Championship, but obviously the main football league in general is coming back this weekend. So competitive football, I'm looking forward to it. I'll admit I don't watch much kind of Championship or League One, League Two football. I'll
No,
freely admit that, but um, in general, it's nice to have it back again. It gets me excited, potentially even more for the week later when Premier League is back.
I'm very much looking forward to it tomorrow night. I think we've got Sheffield Wednesday against Saints. The interesting thing with the three relegated teams is that they will start this season with some very strong teams, and they are likely to not be anything like that when players like Lavia eventually get sold, Ward-Prowse eventually goes, Livramento I think has been linked with Newcastle today. I think Walker Peters has been linked elsewhere as well. A lot of these teams, as Leicester have learned already with Tillemans, I know granted his contract came to an end anyway, but James Maddison gone. The pain for them has kind of happened early. I think other teams, especially those big three that have come down, will feel that pain eventually, but might get themselves off to a good start. The other thing to consider with it as well is that the three teams that have gone down don't or haven't probably played much Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday football for
Yeah.
a long, long time, and it's relentless. That league is probably the most enjoyable league as when Bournemouth were in it and doing well as that I've come across, and that's because of you just feel like it can't be another game today. It can't be another game. I feel that I go to a lot of football. Imagine if you're a home and away supporter in the Championship, you'd spend no time at home, would you?
Yeah,
Especially,
it puts pressure on the new managers
oh my
because
God,
once you
yeah,
start the season, I mean, you've got. I mean, I know with the whole thing about Burnley were a good team anyway. When they came back, they were kind of promotion candidates without Vincent Company. But obviously, what they did in the Championship last season, they took to it quite quickly. Basically, anyone who's got a new manager is going to be hoping for the same kind of thing because you've only really got pre-season. It puts all the pressure on pre-season. Once you
yeah,
start, apart from maybe the first couple of weeks, is it in the season? You're basically, as you say, playing
yeah. I think the
Sunday, Tuesday, or
first
Saturday,
start
Tuesday. So
Saturday to ease them in, and then it's full steam ahead.
yeah,
And I know that they split the fixtures over Wednesday and Tuesdays, but you still end up playing Saturday anyway. So and sometimes Friday nights as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I will give it a good watch, and I think
yeah.
we've got some strong teams without
I was
going
going to
in
say it
too
looks like
far.
a really, really strong league this year. I'm not saying it isn't normally, but
No,
almost from a historical perspective, just of
I
some of the
fully
teams
expect
that would used to be in the Premier League a lot as well, or at
yeah,
least the top tier. I mean, I'm just looking down the list now, and there are basically no teams that in there that I haven't consistently heard of since I started looking at or watching football back in the day, or playing football,
yeah.
either in the top tier or around the top tier. So
I
it's
think
looking
a
pretty strong.
sneaky one to keep an eye on from my perspective is, well, there's two teams, Millwall and then Coventry, who did get to the playoffs and did well. I don't think that's too much of a surprise, but I think they'll come good again. I think they've got a pretty good team. But you're right, looking down the list, you got West Brom, Watford, Swansea, Sunderland, Stoke, Cardiff with Aaron Ramsey. It'd be interesting to see how he gets on. He'll probably play once every 6 months or something, knowing him, but they'll do well. I think it'll
Yeah,
be really, really good. But I like you. I don't watch enough of it to cast any full judgment on it. I'm just looking forward to it starting.
yeah. So I do want to come on now to some fantasy football. I know I love it. I mean, can't say. I mean, I'm eager to do this bit. Generally speaking, I felt like I would just run through my current draft of where I'm looking, where my team sits at the moment. I have to admit, it's probably changed more in the last couple of days than it has in the preceding 3 weeks,
Yeah,
mainly due to injury news and such. Like, if you're all right, we'll just jump into it.
yeah. Fire away, mate.
I
Let's rattle them off.
So I'm looking to do a 3-5-2 to start. I think mainly because, especially for points for midfielders, there's a bonus in having that. And so you get an extra point for a goal rather than having a forward. You get a clean sheet point as well, clean sheets. And generally speaking, if you can get forwards that are pretty involved in the games in general, then on average you're going to score more points than your forwards and your defenders in general. So I've got a 3-5-2. So my bench goalkeeper to start with is going to be Areola. So he's at West Ham at the moment. Now there's a theory that he'll be West Ham's number one, and they weren't actually too bad as a defensive team last season, but he is on the cheapest end at 4 million. For someone like Areola, if he does end up being West Ham number one, he might be good for rotation because there'll be times when my main goalkeeper will have bad fixtures. And my main goalkeeper, until last week, it was Flecken from Brentford, who I thought would be Brentford's number one. It's now Andre Onana. Now, that isn't a Man United bias, and he's at 5 million. It's mainly because, from a defensive perspective, I wanted to cover Manchester United defence. They did keep the most clean sheets last season. And secondly, because of the way he plays, he's more likely to have more of the ball than David De Gea ever had. And as such, he'll take away some of the bonus points that, say, Luke Shaw would have, or Diego Dallo, or any of the other Manchester United defenders would have had when they get clean sheets. And so, in my mind, he makes Luke Shaw less of an option and himself more of an option. And he
It's
is
interesting.
0.5 million cheaper than Luke Shaw to own. At the back, as my £4 million third bench option, which I'll almost never play, I've got Kabore from Luton. Luton's defence is probably not going to be very good, but he seems to be the starting right wing back, I believe it is, for Luton, and they seem to be potentially going with five at the back. The whole idea with a 4 million third bench is, I mean, I can't remember any time last season when my third bench came onto the pitch, just not
Right.
once. So the idea is you just go as cheap as possible in the area you're going to save money. And for me, that's defense. But if you can find someone who does actually play, then it's a bonus. And so that's basically why he's there. Another option is like Baldock from Sheffield United. I think he's 4 million as well. So, and he's a wing back for Sheffield United. So you can go with him instead. My next one is an interesting one. I did have John Stones in, but it's not going to be him anymore. I pulled him down. So I've gone for Udogi, I think is how you pronounce his name, from Spurs.
Right.
Now, he's 4.5 million, so he's on the cheapest end of the spectrum, and he'll be my first bench option. So he's going to be my kind of rotational defender. And the idea being that their fixtures get quite okay. They're pretty decent from week 3 onwards, and I won't be playing him in weeks 1 and 2 anyway, because they play Bournemouth, Burnley, and Sheffield United in a row. It's more just the fact that in pre-season he seems to have been pretty exciting for Spurs, and generally Postecoglou seems to prefer him at left back over Perisic and I think Sessegnon. I think Perisic is going to leave anyway, and I'm not sure about Sessegnon, so I'm not worried about him being on the bench on on a punt essentially, because if he does end up playing and they do end up being quite an attacking team, which it seems to like they will be, then you never really know. The only problem with that is that Spurs don't look like they're going to be a great defensive team, so he might not get many clean sheets, but the odd assist here and there will be good.
Yeah.
My next defenders, I mentioned to this view last week, so I've got Gabriel from Arsenal. He's at
Yeah.
5 million, so he'll be playing. I just personally thought he was the best Arsenal option at the back, left-footed centre back, so I didn't think his minutes were going to be a problem, even with Timber. He's actually the biggest attacking threat that you can claim from Arsenal, even including Zinchenko. Pretty good. Then my next one is Estupinian, the Brighton defender. He is just insanely attacking for Brighton, and again, they're a really good attacking team. Now, you'll notice that I've been saying attacking a lot when we're coming to defenders, but it's mainly because the the bonus you get for having attacking returns for a defender is massive. Clean sheets are brilliant, but they're not everything in FBL. And so if you can get someone who is in a decent team who will probably keep decent clean sheets, but then is also a very attacking player for the team, they're like the ideal. So again, Estupinian's a good example. He's at 5 million. And then I've got Ben Chilwell. He's mainly in because Chelsea's fixtures are brilliant after game week 3. And considering Liverpool's defence still looks shaky in pre-season, I'm not worried about him playing Liverpool first game of the season. And again, he's an extremely attacking player, and we know historically what he's been able to do in FPL. So that's why he's in there. It could have easily been Reece James, but Reece James' injury history isn't fantastic. So that's my defensive line. Now, all 5 of my midfielders are going to play, barring any injury. And I'll just rattle through them. So I've got Brendan Mbuemo from Brentford. He's
Yeah.
my kind of budget midfielder. He's at 6.5 million. He's on penalties. He's basically nailed in that team. He's got really good attacking data. Brentford are actually a decent attacking team. I just think in general he's probably the best person to pick for 6.5 million. You can go for people like Matoma instead, or any of the other Brighton assets if you think they're going to be good. I just worry that Matoma actually might get rotated quite a bit, considering how many attacking players they've got. Then my next midfielders are Odegaard and Saka from
Yeah.
Arsenal. Odegaard's a new addition because Jesus got injured.
Okay.
So they're both 8.5 million, and to me, they're the best two Arsenal attacking players to own in the game in general. Again, both nailed. I know Saka's on penalties, or I believe he will
He
be
is.
on
Yeah.
penalties. So they're both just, I mean, they're no-brainers. Arsenal's fixtures are fantastic. They're a really good attacking team. They're the two best attacking players from that team. They're in. The next two, I've got Man United bias, Bruno Fernandes at 8.5 million. He's actually, I mean, he created the most chances of anyone in the league last year. And he massively underperformed his data because no one was there to put the ball in the back of the net. But now he does have a couple of people who can put the ball in the back of the net. Well, Hoyland potentially, but mainly he's got someone like Mason Mount alongside him to help him out. I think he'll be a bit unleashed almost this year. He has historically had over 200 points in a season before, so I wouldn't be surprised if he hits that again. He's 8.5 million. And then Marcus Rashford going at 9 million. He's, again, he was the main goal threat for Manchester United last season. I actually don't think he will be if Hoyland gets going this season, but he's almost always involved in anything attacking Manchester United do. And again, they were a decent attacking team last season, so he's in. And for the kind of, I think 9 million and 8.5 level, there's a lot of different options.
Yeah.
But in my mind, those are the four potentially best on their own. And having that many in that area means you can chop and change. If Phil Foden suddenly plays 90 minutes every single game for Man City, you can easily switch Bruno Fernandes to down to a Phil Foden and save a bit of money, or any of them basically who you feel like might be worth changing. At the front, I have my 4.5 million bench fodder option, who's almost never going to play. So for me at the moment, it's Semenyo from Bournemouth, even though I don't think he's going to get any minutes.
Yeah.
And then a change, although this may change again because it sounds like he might be injured as well. I put Nkunku in from Chelsea,
Yeah. Me too.
7.5 million. It was Gabriel Jesus, but with his injury, I know he's not going to be in. So I put Nkunku, and it sounds like potentially Nkunku's injured. I don't honestly know, but if he isn't, he's staying. And for 7.5 million, I think it's good to have someone at that kind of price range, even if it's not him. So it could be if you're really a Liverpool fan and you want to punt on one of the Liverpool players, so Darwin Nunez or someone like that, just to have someone at that price, because then you can stay flexible. And then the last one is the most obvious in the team, Erling Haaland, 14 million, I know, but for me, it's a case of he's the best asset in FPL. He's in the best team. They've got phenomenal fixtures. I mean, he had expected goals of over a goal a game last year. And he's going to be my captain almost every week. I know it's boring, but truthfully, I think I would lose out much more against the field in not having him than I would gain in the money I would save putting elsewhere from other players.
Absolutely.
And so ultimately, he's got to be in the team. That's my team in general. There are plenty of other people you could consider. I mean, in the middle, it could be Foden, it could be Maddison, Martinelli instead of the other two, it could be Raheem Sterling. You could consider Diaby from Aston Villa instead of Mbuemo. At the back, you could consider someone like Reece James or Luke Shaw or various other 5.5s, John Stones
Yeah.
instead potentially than Chilwell. The only consideration at goalkeeper is if David Raya comes in and he seems to be the Premier League player for Arsenal.
Yeah.
He's 4.5, so I could switch Gabriel out and for someone else, and then put David Raya in. I mean, there's probably who else was I was thinking? Sanchez, because he's probably going to go to Chelsea, so he could cover the Chelsea defence. But this is where I've settled so far.
Amazing,
I
mate.
don't.
You're
Yeah.
definitely the target for a lot of us. So we joined a paid group
I
and
hardly
definitely a
think so.
target for a lot of us.
It's luck as well. You have to get lucky. So, and I was
Absolutely, mate.
extremely lucky last season.
You've got to have it all going the right way for you, haven't you?
Oh yeah, at the right moments. You've also got to just think about it. in general. So like not using your chips too early and things like this that tend to hurt your overall rank.
Awesome, mate. Thank you so much for covering that. And yeah, I think we've spent a lot of time talking about all sorts, haven't we? Really. So yeah, top stuff. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into the FPL and actually really seeing it start and seeing how things go. You'll definitely see some mad decisions happening with people. It always kills me when you load up some random Brentford player scored a hat trick and you can almost guarantee the highest points that weekend. Somebody's managed to triple captain me, and that's always a good laugh.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But you'll always get that. You can't have everyone.
Legend. All right, mate. Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you everybody for listening. We've had a great time, and we really appreciate all the feedback we've got so far. We will start getting some guests on to talk through Man v Fat stuff and Fat Lads football stuff, and really what else we want to know about them and talk about their teams, and if they're doing FPO as well, we'll cover all of that. But thank you very much for your ears, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Cheers.